Welcome back to Media7, where I'm talking about the future of public broadcasting in New Zealand and whether there is one, with Rachel Cunliffe, Peter Bell and Lindsay Shelton. Now, Peter Bell, we've spent half the show talking about public service broadcasting without defining it. I thought you did it quite well in the letter you wrote to the listener. Could you reprise that for us?
Sure. Well, I think one of the crucial things is that it's non-commercial, and the main reason for that is that it then has no influence by commercial entities, which means it can't be owned by a commercial entity either. You probably know, I think we've got 5 free-to-air channels in New Zealand. 2 of them are owned by New Zealanders, all of us, and 3 of them are owned by overseas. But
why does that matter? If a good program's a good program, why does it matter if it's, you know, in a commercial or non-commercial environment?
I guess it matters when it comes down to editorial influence. We've just seen Australia, that Gina Reinhold, the richest woman in Australia, has bought a big chunk of Fairfax. She bought a big chunk of Channel 10 recently, and she started to have some influence on what the content is on air, in terms of bringing a conservative person on to giving them a show, basically. So that's the kind of thing you face up to. Sure, if I own a channel, I can have influence on it, as same as I own a newspaper. And you could say that's fair enough in a world where everyone has influence, but of course they don't. So I think there is some necessity to have an independent voice, and of course one of the independent things would be to have no commercial imperative on it. Yeah.
A commercial world as well has an interest, understandably, in only a really narrow range of subjects. I know so many filmmakers who have lists of documentaries about New Zealand subjects that they're passionate about making, but the system does not allow them to make these documentaries because the group of commercial broadcasters will not show them. And that throws up...
for perfectly sound commercial reasons, one must say.
Commercial reasons, yeah. But nevertheless, these untold stories are all over the place. It's the New Zealand On Air model, which is seen to be flawed, because New Zealand On Air, which has the money to spend on programs about us, can only spend that money if a broadcaster says yes. So you've got all those filmmakers all over the country who have their lists of topics, and the topics don't get made. And that's where public broadcasting can come in. It can show these topics.
I have to say, you told our researcher, Sarah Daniel, that the budgets for Stratos and TVNZ7 could, quote, be taken out of the NZ On Air budget without doing any damage. I'm sure there's a few people who disagree. That's quite a lot of TV not being made if you do that.
Excuse me, what's the balance? A few commercial programs not being made as against the survival or the resuscitation of 2 channels that are giving a tremendous service, are giving a tremendous service to the public. The money out of NZN's budget would be a pittance compared to the huge amount of money they got to spend.
It would be about a quarter of it, Lindsay.
A quarter of it? No.
Yeah.
Is that right? A quarter of it would be well spent to keep TVNZ7 going and to get Stratos back on the air.
Rachel, are you as wedded to the non-commercial, you know, the importance of a non-commercial environment as the 2 gentlemen here? Does it hurt that much if there's a little sponsor's logo somewhere?
I actually think it does, because I think they should be totally separate. Even having TVNZ running their commercial and non-commercial part, it's almost like if the non-commercial TVNZ7 does too well, it eats into their bottom line. So, you know, has it almost been set up to fail? You know, you can't promote it, you don't publicise it, you don't put all this money in because it's taking it away from your advertisers' money. So I think it has to be totally separate.
One of the reasons when they set 6 and 7 up, one of the mandates at TVNZ was that it took no audience away from their 2 channels. Yeah.
So, well, hopefully it grows the broadcast audience.
Yeah.
As I said before, though, we live in straitened times. I mean, what is it about television that makes it more special and more important than, say, people who care for the disabled? Because this is the argument that's going to be put against.
Sure, but I think you can come up with that argument for virtually anything. My argument back would be that we spend enormous amounts on a justice system. We believe that that is right and important in a democracy, that people have the right to trial, etc. I would say that freedom of information and unfettered information and important information for a country needs to come before people who are then going to vote in a government.
It's called the public good, I think, which a phrase which we mentioned in a rather low-key manner. It seems with what's going on that the government has no interest in public good, at least as it's conveyed on channels like TVNZ7 and Stratos.
What would you like to see happen? What's your ideal scenario?
I'd like to find a way to get Stratos back on the air. And the Stratos people ran that channel on the smell of an oily rag and came up with a program schedule that was just as good as the SBS model in Australia, which gets huge amounts of Australian government money and has received that money for several decades. And I'd certainly like to find a way for TVNZ7 to continue. They have real news between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock on this channel. No one knows about it because you look in the listener and the programs aren't there. But to lose that hour of sane news, uninterrupted by commercials and without all the extraneous stuff which turns up on the networks, is a major contributor to the public good for New Zealanders.
What would I like to see? Well, I think if we look back and TVNZ doesn't keep going, we'll look back and go, actually, we had...
TVNZ7 you're talking about.
TVNZ7. That we had a model right now that we could actually afford. I mean, it's expensive broadcasting, but I think if you're looking at a channel that could keep running but still fill a need, then this is probably it. And getting rid of it at this stage I think we'll look back very sadly upon it if it doesn't happen. What do I think is going to happen? Well, I think if this stops, then TVNZ really has no reason for existing as a state-owned asset, which sadly might be the will of the government.
So, Rachel, last word.
I would like to see a channel like TVNZ7 set up totally separately, so there's no mixed messages. The public are very clear about it too, about where funding's coming from, and it stands alone and is very separate.
So, separate model. I think it's very clear. Thank you, Rachel Cunliffe, Peter Bell and Lindsay Shelton. Now, the smartphone has all but replaced the family camera, and there's a plethora of photography applications available for the telephony-based shutterbug. Ironically, most of those apps seek to replicate the look and feel of film. Jose Barbosa visited a local app developer and asked how it was done.
Chances are, if you've got one of these, it's probably filled to the gunnels with apps. Most of them are mere distractions. Here's one that emits an amusing sound. Actually, that is pretty amusing. But most of them are genuinely useful or creative. And one of those programs is called iSuper8. What iSuper8 does is it takes any video you've shot on your iPhone and turn it into something that looks like an original Super 8 film. It's actually pretty cool, and you can see the results here. iSuper8 is considered one of the better film apps out there, and it was created here in Hamilton by a small team headed by Ryan and Klaus. They met in dubious circumstances while studying at Wintec.
We made a film together. We were shooting in a dairy and someone got the dates wrong, and it was a robbery scene. Police showed up, what, 10 of them. With weapons.
With M4 carbines.
Yeah. So that was sort of an important bonding session.
It was, yeah. We went and formed a film collective, at which point we started to get a few contracts. From there, we then synced up with MEA Mobile, came on board, and I was really just sort of exposed to the whole world of software development and app creation, and it's just been full steam ahead since then.
The idea for the app came from Klaus while on a Spanish holiday.
My friend brought his iPhone down. We were just sort of shooting, talking like we should just make like a vacation video, like an old school style home video. And I sort of started mucking around with color, different degrading of digital image sort of thing. And I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel in any way. Like, video was definitely the natural progression. We just happened to be one of the first ones to do it.
Creating the app and doing it well wasn't easy. There was a steep learning curve.
The difficulty in creating randomness out of mathematics, you know, you're creating texture and beautiful accidents out of a set amount of
parameters.
Yeah, parameters, sort of thing. So, you know, that's a challenge.
The other thing is trying to get that communication between like a mathematician and a visual person. So trying to understand the colour spaces and communicate what someone is visually seeing into a mathematical equation so that it can be represented. That sort of took a lot of toing and froing.
Because I'd be like, well, we need you know, this needs to be less saturated. He's like, well, what's saturation? And I was like, well, it's just like sort of less color. And he'd be like, well, how do I do that? And then he'd start talking numbers, and I'd be like, well, it's just a thing that you drag in Photoshop, man. Like.
And the app keeps developing. Its latest version is even slicker than the previous.
The classic option and treatment is always going to be there, but we've added on to that a lot. The user has a lot of freedom to experiment.
And the great experiment continues as our tools evolve so we can create this or this.
It's almost a genre, though, the Jose fallover. Anyway, that's our show for this week. Thanks again to Rachel Cunliffe, Peter Bell and Lindsay Shelton, and to you for watching. We'll be back with a special Media7 next week with two of the very interesting guests from the Webstock conference. Until then, goodbye.